Hi, and thanks for looking in. I'm Andy Stevenson, and recently I hooked up on a video call with Nick Albert, the author of the hugely successful Fresh Eggs and Dog Bed series. I had the privilege of narrating the audiobook versions and had great fun doing so. And I wanted people to get the opportunity to meet Nick and hear a little bit more about his work, his writing plans, and how life is treating him. Now, if you're not yet familiar with this series, which consists of 4 books, they are delightfully funny memoirs about his life in a remote part of the Republic of Ireland, having made the decision around 20 years ago now to uproot from his busy life in the southeast of England with his wife Leslie and several mischievous dogs. They bravely took on the renovations of their ramshackle farmhouse in the middle of the countryside in order to live the life, if not of leisure, certainly of pleasure. In addition to the Fresh Eggs series, Nick has also written a brilliant political thriller called Hunting the Wrecking Crew. And if you continue to the end of the video, I'll tell you how you can get hold of a free copy of the audiobook version, which I also had the pleasure of narrating. Now, living out in the sticks, as both of us do, the internet speed and reliability is not always that great, so apologies that the video is not quite broadcast quality. Actually, about halfway through the video, something peculiar happened, nothing to do with the internet performance, which caused us both to chuckle. I'll say no more at this stage. So enjoy meeting Nick, and I'll see you again at the end of the interview. Hi, Nick. It's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining me today, because we've never actually met, strangely, although we've worked together a lot on 5 different projects now. I've never actually seen you. We've spoken on the phone a few times. We've probably exchanged thousands of emails during the production processes of the audiobooks that I've done for you. But this is the first time we've actually seen each other face to face. And okay, we're not in the same room, but hey ho, the wonders of technology enables us to see each other. And the purpose of today really is to find out a little bit more about you and your work and see where it's heading, and to just have a nice chat, really. That's the aim. And I hope that the listeners will find it useful to know a little bit more about your work and about you and the audiobook and the book and Kindle versions of your work. So hey ho, here we go. Now, the first question I've got for you is, did you always plan to have a go at writing? Was this something that just emerged when you moved to Ireland, or was it something that you've been itching to do long before that?
Well, Andy, let me first of all say it's a delight to meet you as well. I hope that you and indeed the people out there watching this and listening are not too depressed with the live version video electronic format of me. So it is a delight to meet you. And yeah, we have talked a lot. But why did I always want to write? Yes. In truth, I think I wrote my first book when I was about 8. It was called Sticky the Stick Insect, and was the adventures of Sticky the Stick Insect.
Oh, wow.
And his first day out. I've got to say it was about 5 pages long. It was absolutely full of spelling mistakes and grammatical errors, and was not a big hit with the critics. But I powered through, and you know, from my working life, I spent a lot of time writing one way or another. But the thing that moving to Ireland did was it gave me the space and the time to actually sit down, you know, experiment with that craft. You know, even though my spelling hasn't improved, if anything, it's got worse.
I haven't noticed.
Zoe Ma, my long-suffering editor, who's done wonderful work. I quite often sent back messages to me saying, "Did you really mean to write that?" But anyway, yeah. So it gave me space, and that was the great thing about being here, and you know, the privilege of being able to sit down and go, "Okay, I want to write a book."
Okay.
And then write another one and another one, and there we go.
And was the Fresh Eggs book 1, that was your first published book?
No, it's a bit of a drawn-out story, but the gist of it is what I now call the manuscript. Originally came out under a different title. It was a, I'd say, very rough version It actually covered about 3 books, the way it was thrown together. The story of the kind of background to that is that when I got that written, it turned out to be surprisingly popular. In retrospect, very surprisingly popular, because you know, when I look back on it, it was rough. It lacked some of the subtleties of understanding how to get a point across without upsetting people, or you know, not in a bad way, but people just misunderstanding what I was trying to say.
Right.
Even though a lot of the stories, well, all the stories were true, you know.
Yeah.
But when you see something, there are ways, in literary terms, there are ways of getting that across that the majority of people would go, oh yeah, I get that, whereas you can easily word it differently, and that can, you know, rub people up the wrong way. One of the reasons why I shy away from things like Twitter and so on and so forth as much as I can, because, you know, why would I want to say in 120 characters what it can take me an hour and a half to say and still upset as many people as I do? So that manuscript, if I may, I had sent that out to quite a few publishers, along with another manuscript, which we might talk about later, which became Wrecking Crew. And I actually had dozens of responses, but I had 3 positives.
Okay.
Just a quick point. God bless J.K. Rowling, because I saw sending out to publishers is a horrible thing, particularly for somebody like me who takes rejection really badly.
Right. Yeah.
So to have these rejection letters coming back, and it was only when I read that J.K. Rowling had dozens of rejection letters, and in fact, when she wrote her latest novels, which are written under a different name, which eludes me at the moment, she actually sent that manuscript to her existing publisher, I believe, and they wrote back and said, no, it's not our stuff, because they didn't know who she was. So that can be very disappointing. So I got 3 responses that were definite positives. The third one really interested me because it was from the publisher I went with, which is Ant Press. And what they actually said to me was that they really liked the manuscript, but if I could explain it this way, this is what they were seeing. And they were kind of reading along and going, oh, this is really, really good. And then it stopped. And then it went on to the next bit. And they went, oh, this is really, really good. And then it stopped. So they went back to me and said, look, this thing here, we want more of this. And this bit, you can get rid of that. And so we were at 120, 150,000 words. And they asked me pretty much, can you just scrap the whole thing and write it again? But put more detail in and put more of yourself into it, and kind of, I think exact words they were saying, write the best version of yourself that you can.
Right.
So it took another year of really hard work, and kind of like trying to park a car, backing in and out several times until I got it right. And then once I'd kind of got the first aha moment, I mean, right, so that's what you're looking for. And then from there, we were away, and it went great. So off the back of that manuscript, the first year, I can't remember the exact dates, but I mean, Fresh Eggs and Dog Beds 1, and then 2, and then 3, and now 4 has come out as well.
I think 2017 was the year that Fresh Eggs 1 was
no, not that long ago, surely.
And you obviously got that. You obviously got the hang of what they were looking for, because 2018 was the next one, 2019, and then 21. So you know, the 4 books came out quite quickly, and of course you had the Hunting the Wrecking Crew in between that as well.
I did, yeah.
But I just wanted to focus on the comedic value of your books, because there are many funny moments in the Fresh Eggs series. I mean, there's some serious and some sad moments as well, which you know, the blend of those makes the books really, really enjoyable. But the funny moments in particular stand out for me as a narrator, because there were times when I had to keep redoing certain lines because I couldn't stop laughing.
I remember you telling me, yes.
And I think I sent you one once, didn't I?
You did, yes, you did.
An outtake or whatever they call it. So have you always been a bit of a comedian? Is this kind of a natural thing for you, just to make people laugh?
I think there's one thing that has always jumped to my mind is that I would much rather leave people smiling than I would the opposite.
Yes.
I think I'm extremely socially uncomfortable. I will point out, this is the very first video that I have ever done as an author. I have done a couple of audio interviews. I've done a lot of written interviews. This is the first video one. You know, the audio ones I was able to hide under the desk and do my reading from there. But because I'm very, very uncomfortable, when I first became successful, if you can call it that, as an author, I was then shocked to discover that I was going to have some kind of a personal profile and a Facebook profile and an Instagram profile. And as an author, I write from what's within me and from what I know and my experiences. But that is very, very separate from my personal life. So that also goes back to how I was as a child. That, you know, I'm just not necessarily easily comfortable in that in those kind of one-to-one situations, and I'm very, very, very private and protective of my privacy. So as a kid, I learned very quickly that a good way to stop getting beaten up was to crack jokes and to learn jokes. I was able to you know, to put on voices and do funny walks and kind of that was a great protection for me when I was being embarrassed and awkward, you know. And as you may remember, all of my voices, unlike your brilliant talent, all of my voices, you know, sound like pantomime pirates, whatever sort of accent I'm trying to do, they all come out exactly the same. But it does help me as a defense mechanism, I think, as a lot of people similar to me would have.
Right.
You know, I have a great memory I have a visual memory. So when I tell stories, the written stories and the jokes would all be, I have this kind of video in my head of what it looks like, and that helps me to navigate the stories and kind of bring them to life. And I suppose that was the step that brought me into writing more than anything else. Yeah. What was your question again?
Oh, don't worry about that one. We've got plenty more.
I think you asked me if I've always been a comedian. So if you can describe me as being at all funny, I'm a bit funnier in writing than I am in person. So
now, your books, of course, are based on real life events, and I assume that many of the characters that you mention throughout the Fresh Eggs books are real people. So how do you work that? Because will you be potentially upsetting all your neighbours, or do you just give them pseudonyms and they have no idea who you're talking about in the books? So how do you handle that?
It's a very good question. The first thing I would say is that absolutely every single story that is in my books are true.
Okay.
You know, I'm a memoirist and a novelist. I'm not a historian. So, you know, if you want a history book, go off and buy a history book about County Clare or Ireland or whatever. But certainly the stories that occur in the books all happened. They may not necessarily have happened in exactly the chronological order that that they appear in. And certainly as far as the characters are concerned, I think a lot of fans of memoirs and biographies like to think that every single thing is exactly as happened. It's as close as to my memory as I could make it happen. But I've always taken care that the characters that I write are, I would describe them as kind of amalgamations of characteristics. So the events would be true. The names certainly would have been changed or altered or completely changed. Often the genders are changed as well.
Oh, right.
But that is a way of also allowing, you know, apart from protecting people's sensibilities, it also gives me an awful lot more creative freedom to bring that character to life, because you know, I might meet somebody like yourself, you know, I might find them entertaining, interesting, fascinating people. But to bring that character to life in a book, you know, I need that kind of flexibility to, you know, to make it a little bit more fun. Sometimes not necessarily fun. Sometimes it's, you know, you want someone to have a bit more punch in their delivery. So have you offended anybody yet? Not that I've heard of. It's a funny thing in memoir writing, particularly.
Yeah.
I saw a great cartoon a while ago of a memoir writer running one way with all the people behind him going, "You put me in your book, you put me in your book," and going the other way again with all these people going, "You didn't put me in your book, you didn't put me in your book." So I can say that every single person is in the books, but you may not have recognized yourself.
Right.
And if you did recognize yourself, it isn't you. And don't send your lawyer to see me.
And from your books, it would appear that you're very well known for your lists, and you get a bit of stick from
Yes.
dear wife and your daughter for that. So I'm assuming that you must plan your books very carefully, because you certainly planned your DIY project, Forensic.
Yes.
So is that the case?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, my as I've said in the books, my wife, she's a real person. She does exist. Not going to have a big reveal, but she does exist.
No.
Yeah. Her approach to an awful lot of things would be kind of more artistic. It just flows, and well, we'll just make it happen. And she got very frustrated on a number of occasions when I kind of went, well, I'm not going to start this yet until I've worked out exactly how many bits I need and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a great comfort for me to have a plan and a way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I would say from the DIY side, it worked out extremely well. I mean, good. But my lists, yeah, I have here. This is literally, what do we have here? If you're interested, so fresh egg stuff. That one.
Okay. Yes.
That's filled with. This would be fairly common. What you would often see is lots and lots of post-it notes and pages and pages. Look, see that book 5. It says. I don't know if it's the right way around because the screen's probably reversed.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of notes in there, and various things that happen that I'm going to put in the story and make it seem funny and interesting. One hopes that's the plan anyway. And I also have another book there, which is one I have. It's more like a diary, but that keeps loads and loads and loads of notes. So I keep that and I have it planned out. Andy, I don't know if you know, but you've completely vanished.
I know. I'm looking at my image there, and it's.
I think you've either missed it up or something. So
you might think that it's become very foggy.
I was going to say it's the house on fire. The house on fire, and you hadn't noticed.
I'm just going to close a curtain behind me because that might help.
It might help. Okay, we'll take a pause there. You might need to just wipe the screen. It's the camera.
That's not helped, has it?
No, come back into view. Is it your background? Switch your background off and on.
No, it's the light.
The camera's actually missed it up. Have you got high humidity there or something?
Stop breathing. I think it's the light coming from the skylight. Damn it!
Right.
And I don't have a blind on that, so let's see if we can just turn this sideways a little bit.
I'll take it we're on pause at the moment. So.
That was exciting. It looked like we had a fire here or a bad case of fog, but I've attended to it. I've blocked a skylight above us because something was going on outside. I'm not sure what it was, and I've changed the lighting. So we're now resuming after a little break. Good to see you again, Nick.
Yes. You too, Andy. I think what it was
it
was that strange phenomenon called sunshine, something that neither of us were particularly familiar with.
No,
it's coming through.
It's quite rare in Cumbria, and
here too. Although I must admit, I have had to pull the curtains over a little bit. Although it's a bit cloudy now, but it was lovely and bright earlier.
Yeah, it's usually bright earlier before I get up, and then we never see the sun during the day. And but there you go. But it's probably just as well because being a bit of a ginger nut, or at least I was, the sun doesn't agree with me too much. In fact, I tend to get moonburn, I think, if I sit out in a full moon. So
right.
I have to be a bit careful. But anyway,
equally an Irish phenomena, I will say.
But we were talking about lists, and before we were rudely interrupted by events. And I was asking you, because you're very well known in your books for making lists, and you get a bit of stick from your wife and daughter about it frequently, I think. So I'm guessing that when you construct your books, lists play an important part.
Yeah, very much so. It's as you suggest, it's in my nature to like to have a plan or a plot. I find it very difficult to kind of just wander along,
Yes.
following the winds of fortune, as it were.
Yeah.
And as you're aware, my wife and I differ substantially in that her approach to, say, gardening is much more artistic. She just lets things happen. I would want to have it all planned out in 3D. And
Right.
certainly from the book point of view,
Yeah.
I've had before now the whole floor and a bed covered in pieces of A4 with post-it notes and stuck all over them. And even now I have my kind of diary, my notes. There's another one there for Wrecking Crew, which is just full of bits of paper with all sorts of
Yeah.
post-it notes on them. So, that's really the way I operate. And I think what it does is it gives me, I have a kind of butterfly brain. So if you can imagine kind of, I know where I'm starting and where I want to go to, but it allows me to go off to the sides and sniff the flowers and then still get back on track.
Right. Right. Yeah.
As you've already experienced, if you don't keep me on track, I do tend to wander off into places you never thought the conversation would go.
Okay. And you remember a lot of detail about your life, which is expressed in the books. It provides the many of events in the books, some funny, some sad, some exciting, and what have you.
Such is life.
Yes, such is life. Yeah. But I mean, if I was trying to write a memoir, I would struggle to remember anything that's remotely interesting. So how do you do that? It's probably partially linked to your lists, maybe.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't keep a formal diary these days with modern technology, because I tend to take a lot of photos. So
Yes,
they end up on
good
my
ones.
photo database, and I find I can scroll through the photos as I'm building up
Okay.
the basis for the book. This is obviously talking about the memoirs in this stage.
Yeah.
Much like a comedian, if you like. If you see a lot of comedians go on stage, they'll have a few notes written on their hand, and they'll just be keywords. For me, my memory is not what you necessarily call photographic technically, but my recollection of events tends to be very much a replay of things in real video format.
Right. Yeah.
And so for me, if I can pick up a keyword that reminds me of a particular sequence of events, for example, right now, it just came to mind, there was a scene from, I think it's Fresh Eggs 4, maybe 3, where I was in a particular shop. It was actually Halfords, and I was looking to buy some balm for leather, and there was a lady in there, and there was a whole sequence of events that happened that were, in my mind, very funny, with me having to bounce back and forwards. Now I can actually picture that event literally as if you were watching it on a store security video, but I also feel my emotions at the time, the other people and what they look like, and I suppose the thing that does jump to my mind is that saying that the people's recollections of events may differ, so what someone else saw from that event might be completely different to what I see. But that helps me in my writing style. To kind of be able to do that, and that's how I recall things, and they do appear to me to be crystal clear in detail and the things that happen.
Well, that's a great asset, I must admit. I
think for a writer it certainly is.
I'm sure. All right, so you've been an author now for quite a few years, but what's the most difficult thing about it, would you say?
I think it's pretty much the loneliest profession in the world. Now that's not to say that you're just sitting on your own all the time, because authors have a team of people around them in one respect or another, whether it's the editor, the publisher, the artist who do a lot of the artwork, also your family, the support you get from them. But while you're working, and while you're in your own head doing the preparation to work, it's just you and your characters, that they're really the only people to keep you company. And it's a very strange thing, because if you think of a book, it might be a year in the planning, it might be a year in the writing, and then it might be almost say another year or so while the editing process goes on, the publication process, the the
Yeah.
cover and everything else, the
Yeah.
marketing. And so you could be a long time before you see any essential product off the back of that. That's quite often why authors get extremely excited when they do their big reveal that I've seen people do on the internet. Where they kind of pick, the book comes out and they go, oh look, But I mean, that book, for example, and this is a very odd thing for me to do. I don't know about on yours, but that looks back to front. I think that's because of the way the camera works.
No,
But
it's
this
okay.
book,
I can see it
that
clearly.
was several years in the making to get to the point where we'd actually got the finished product.
Yes.
So it's a very hard thing to keep yourself on, to motivate yourself, to keep yourself on track, and to keep the same energy in your writing as you go along. And that's probably one of the reasons why I've taken a little bit of a break since I finished Fresh Eggs 4, just to give myself a chance to recharge, because I think I wrote 5 or 6 books in probably in a 5-year period, and a couple of other manuscripts which haven't seen the light of day. So
I'm sure they do take over your life.
It's a difficult job. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'm sure they take over your life. I mean, it's similar, but only very vaguely similar with narrating audiobooks, in that people think that you just read it, and however long it takes to read the book, that's how long it will take to record the audiobook. But there's a lot more to it than that. About an hour of content takes around about 8 hours of work overall. So you can imagine a 10-hour book going to be.
Well, I mean, it's a very good point. And if I could take a moment to turn the interview around and sing your praises, the Wrecking Crew is a good example of when we've worked together on a project, that from inception right the way through to delivery, and as somebody who's very, very shy, very uncomfortable with what we're doing now as such, and I kind of shy away from stuff like that. To be able to work with somebody so closely, albeit remotely, and it was great for me to see, going back to what we said earlier about the visual kind of things I have in my head, the video kind of look of each scene, each story, and to be able to relate that to you, and get you to produce them. And I will say, as an author, dabbling or working in audio, if any other authors listen to this, it is not an easy, straightforward process. So it's great to have a narrator that you can work with, where you can say, look, no, that didn't work out as I wanted. This is what I think the voice might be, or can we change this approach or that? And you were very, very kind of malleable and amenable to that. And the end result was spot on, exactly what I was looking for.
Great. Well, that's
so I was delighted with the whole process. I was delighted, with the end result as well. And that's why we've worked together now on, 5 books, and hopefully not 6 coming soon.
Well, that's good to hear. And I think from my point of view, it's important to sort of submit one chapter at a time to the author, so they've got the opportunity to if say, for example, a new character comes into the book at that point, and is going to appear later, we want to get the character right and the voice right. We don't want to find out later that it was a Scotsman when I was given a Cockney accent or something. So it's good to do it in stages like that, and I think it helps both of us. So
well, that's right. It worked well for me as well, because that's how my editing works. I found out to my cost quite early on that I'm very consistent. So if I make a mistake, I make the same mistake over and over and over again. So, working with my editor, very much the same as what we did, that, if something goes wrong, if I've dropped the ball somewhere, it helps that we can sort out what it is very early on and correct that without having to go back through, hundreds of hours of work. So, great. It was a great process.
Okay, and it's not just Fresh Eggs. You've written Hunting the Wrecking Crew, which was a political thriller, which we've just been talking about, of course, and it was great fun to narrate, as all your books were. Not as funny as Fresh Eggs books, because obviously that wasn't the purpose, but
it has a couple of jokes in it.
It had sprinklings of humour, which I particularly noticed because I'd got used to them in the Fresh Eggs series. So it was quite really good fun to do. And it started off with a different title, didn't it? And then you changed it a bit later. Any particular reason for that?
Yeah. Well, I'm given to understand that it's not unusual in the publishing industry. You know, if you go and peruse, for example, Amazon, there are other booksellers, but if you go and look at Amazon, and you search for a particular title, particularly you know, something that's from the older back catalogue, you'll find quite often dozens of versions of the same book, and quite often with a changed title. In respect of originally, I went with Wrecking Crew, which was the you know, the key title based on the not the they're not, you know, the Wrecking Crew isn't actually the lead star in the book.
Sure,
that's Eric Stone, but
Stone,
the Wrecking Crew is certainly what they're up against.
Yes.
But I found out sort of after a while that there are several books called Wrecking Crew. There was also a film called Wrecking Crew from somebody else going back to I think the 1960s. So, you know, I didn't want to mislead people to feel that it's, you know, necessarily about the Wrecking Crew. It is an Eric Stone thing. And in fact, I don't know what the third version of Retrospect is, but now that that Stone is in there, I actually wanted to go with Stone as the title. So I had in my head Stone Cold Retribution as the title for the book, and I would perhaps in retrospect have wanted to do that, because then the next book, if there is one, I've already got Stone built into that title as well. But you know, it'll certainly follow on from that. That would be the hope. Right. The other thing that happened, of course, is and in fact, you helped me on this, and I'm very grateful, and a few other people, was that I went back to, before we did the audio work on the book, I felt it needed an edit for a couple of reasons. One is that some of the technology, certain things had changed. So I wanted it to be as up to date as possible. The second thing is, from a technical writing style, I wanted to make the book punchier, essentially gave it more chapters without giving it more content. That increases the pace, and changed a little bit of the writing style around some of the conversations, and some of the sentences, made them a little shorter, which gives it more punch and more pace. So I wanted to do that. There was a couple of plot holes that I was aware of that I wanted to tweak. And I think in my own head, whether that was the case, I dug a bit of a hole in one place that was going to leave me stuck trying to climb out. So I thought it was far easier just to tweak that and put it right. You know, it was more a case of something I'd done wrong, but me looking at it going, well, that's not quite what I meant. So I've changed that as well. So that meant that when we went to do Audible, it was right. We got it right, and it was ready to roll as what I believe was a very good Audible book.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a terrific story. And when you were writing The Wrecking Crew, and when I was narrating it, I had this in my head that you'd modelled Eric Stone on yourself in some way, mainly because of the karate expert thing. Because you used to be a karate instructor, didn't you, at one time? And
I'm a black belt.
So you're obviously somebody not to be messed with.
Oh no, that's not.
So I thought this is your alter ego here, Eric Stone.
No, I think
your chuckle
Eric Stone. No, I think no, not at all. Look at if I can use the Irish phrase. Look at we, as authors, we're advised to write what we know. So you know, that's why I haven't done much on nuclear physics. I have done a fair bit of research in the book for other things, like, for example, I learned how to pick locks. That was going to be a factor. It ended up as it was edited down to a kind of smaller piece, but I wanted to be able to understand those things. So that's why we write what we know. But Eric Stone would be hugely disappointed if he thought that I was his model. Clumsy, slightly dumpy, and the first thing I used to teach my students, you know, there's an image of, you know, martial arts is all kind of smash them up and all that. The very first thing that I used to teach my students was that there is no shame in walking away or running away.
No, and that comes over in the book where...
well, that's good. I mean, I think, one of the early scenes, actually, the Stone's mind, which would be a similarity, which is, I'm giving you guys as much chance as you like to say, look, let's just step away from
Yeah.
this. There's no need for anyone to get hurt.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly write, through the books, of things I know and such like. I've written a golf book, but I haven't written a book. I haven't written a thriller or a novel that includes any golf apart from a few jokes from
Sure.
golfing things. But
Yeah.
no, there's certainly in the book, Stone is a completely contrived character. But what I wanted to do with him was to make somebody who, kind of, I hate to use the phrase average man or person would look at and go, yeah, that makes sense, because I often read thrillers. I read a lot of books myself. I often read things and I go, well, would you really just go out and kill 8 people and then walk away? I don't think so. I think there would be, somebody would take notice, and perhaps the police would want to do some inquiries. So I like to have that situation with, what would be the triggers that would make you have the certainty that you can go and do something. So that's why I wrote in the series of events and the evidence that was presented.
Right.
And at the end of the day, all thrillers are just a chase. They're a story. You've got, a situation presented. You generally have, sort of the hero and the enemy. I like to keep those as black and white as I can. Right. And then it's really a chase to the end of who's going to get there first, there you go.
Okay. So what are your plans moving forward? Will there be another Fresh Eggs book? So that would make it book 5. And will there be another Eric Stone book as well?
That is the plan. I mentioned a little earlier about that I kind of decided to take a break after Fresh Eggs 4. That coincided with COVID.
Right.
And I was trying to take a bit of a digital break because, being an author these days requires an awful lot of kind of Facebook, Instagram, and all that kind of stuff. And it was taking up an awful lot of my time. And, much as I love to hear and communicate with fans and prospective readers, I also find that extremely tiring mentally, and it kind of sucks your energy, and I think there's a lot of negative stuff out there on the internet as well. So you're kind of you're in an environment where you think, well, if I had my choice, I would have got rid of all of that and wouldn't be doing any of it, and would just be enjoying walking in the countryside and the trees and stuff. And then, if I had my choice, I would just write the books and send them off, and somebody would send me money eventually.
Which was the old day.
But I took that break, and that break, I've got to say, is extended beyond what I expected. But I think what happens in nature then is that vacuum in my time was just filled by DIY and life and other things. And I got into playing golf for myself. And that's been really nice. It's been a great thing to do again, which I haven't done for a long time. And I play golf for my clients, but not for me. So I'm doing that for me now.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to take a bit of a break from narrating at some point this year, because it's funny, because we something that we both got in common is we both moved out to the countryside. Well, obviously you in Ireland, but we're up in Cumbria, and we both had houses that need lots of work. The difference is my wife's more the DIY person than I am, whilst it was the reverse.
There's a man who married wisely.
And basically I like to have a go at DIY stuff, but my wife doesn't really like the results, so it's not very rewarding generally, but there are some things that I need to give her a hand with a bit later on. So, and sometimes you do need a break from I think it's a good thing,
because going back to your earlier question, the plan is certainly to have book 5 of Fresh Eggs and Dog Beds.
Okay.
That's pretty much planned out. I have all my notes, and I've been using the technology and getting ready for that. I would like to do a lot more thriller writing, so there is a book 2 which is going to bring Eric Stone to Ireland. with
Right.
Linda, and
Right.
that story, In Search of a Missing Journalist, and the whole thing is written out, and I know exactly where that's going. There is also a prequel with
Okay.
where Stone first meets some of the
Yeah.
other characters.
Right.
That may be a relatively short book at the moment.
Yeah.
That may even be a short story,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is becoming quite popular these days.
Yeah, that's right. They're coming
So,
back, aren't they? Short stories, I think. So
as somebody who struggles to say in 5 words what I could say in 4 hours, short stories might be a challenge. But I did write one quite recently, actually. I don't know if you saw.
yes,
I did write
was
one
it
quite recently. So
about the jewelry theft? And
the jewelry thing, yes.
yes, I enjoyed
So,
that. Yeah, yeah, I did read that. That was
yeah.
in one of your newsletters.
I quite enjoyed writing. That was my
Yeah,
dipping
that
my
was
toes back in,
that was
and
fun.
that seems to be very popular in itself.
Okay. And any regrets about leaving England? I mean, you've been in Ireland now since how long is it? It's early 2000s, isn't it?
2003, so that's 20
2003.
years.
Yeah. So 20 years. Um, any regrets? Anything you miss about England? I mean, obviously you're
I would say none
grandchildren are over there.
whatsoever. If I was no, I mean, obviously, I have my daughter and grandchildren and her
Yes.
husband. They live in England still. I visited
Yes.
just last weekend.
Okay.
So they're just an hour away, and we've often had the argument. They live in Essex. We potentially, when we decided to move here, we're looking at Portugal and Spain and France
Yes.
and yada yada, and looking at Wales and
Yes,
Leicestershire
there was
and
the pin on the map,
wherever.
wasn't there?
So yeah, absolutely. But a lot of the places we were looking at moving away from kind of the North London Essex area, to get more countrified, as it were, would actually, in travel terms, be further away from my daughter than where we live now.
Yeah.
It's
So
around about an hour's flight from from our local airport to her local airport. So the only reason we don't go more often is that she's got a very, very busy life.
yeah.
And so quite often it's a case of, well, when are you available? But yeah, no, I wouldn't say, look, the sliding doors thing, what would have happened if we turned left or turned right? You can always go back and look at all of those possibilities. And I think that's a very, very dangerous thing to do.
Yes.
To start maybe having regrets about, what happened. But
Yeah.
from our own point of view, I couldn't wish for a better life. I couldn't wish for a more beautiful place to be. I can look out the window now, and literally just outside the window, 20 yards away is forest. I can look this way, and there's 5 miles of moorland. I can go out, and it's forest here. I'm the only person who walks up there. The more I can go miles, and I would not see another person.
Similar here.
It's a wonderful place to live.
We're both fortunate in that respect. Yeah.
No regrets.
So you're still doing your morning walks with the dogs, which often feature in the books, of course.
Yeah. 3 times a day. So
wow,
certainly twice a day. So yeah, the morning walk. There's in different directions. I have walks kind of worked out. So the morning walk is often up through the forest here at the back and back round.
You must be the fittest man in Ireland.
I wish. Obviously the best looking man in Ireland, but not necessarily the fittest.
And undoubtedly, yes. Well, it's been great talking to you, Nick. And people may have noticed that the light went. I mean, we're having all sorts of fun here with the technology, aren't we? Because I had a light here, so I could have done with the sun today coming through the window, because the light popped after about, I don't know, 10 minutes. So I'm a little bit in the dark here, but then the spotlight was on you, so there's no problem with that. And it's been great talking to you. It's been fantastic narrating your books. I'm really looking forward to the new books coming out, because certainly the Fresh Eggs books are enormous fun, and the Wrecking Crew sequel, whatever you decide to call it, I'm sure will be great fun too, but in a different way.
We're looking at Stone Facade.
Stone Facade. Okay.
Yeah, and speaking of the sun, it's just come blasting through.
Yes.
If I opened the curtain, you would barely see me. How bright it is. We'll push that across a bit.
So, yeah, thanks again for your time, Nick. It's been great.
Thank you for having me on your show, as it were.
Yeah, great
I'm
meeting
delighted.
you
I enjoyed that.
in the flesh almost, and look forward to working with you again. And I'm sure your readers and listeners will be gagging for the next books, but no pressure. Take your time, mate.
I'll do my best, Andy. I'll do my very best. And thanks very much.
Okay, thanks a lot. See you again soon. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was fun. Thanks so much, Nick, for your time. And I know your fans will be delighted to have met you in the flesh. Well, almost. Now, earlier, I said I would tell you how you can get a copy of Nick's debut thriller, Hunting the Wrecking Crew, which is book 1 in the Eric Stone series, and I'm confident that if you like thrillers, you will love this one. You can, of course, listen to the 5-minute sample on Audible, and I'd encourage you to do that to make sure that it is the kind of book you'd like. Now, to get your free copy, simply email me to the address below and tell me in which country the planned book 2 in the series is going to be based. A little hint, Nick mentions it in the interview that he's just done. If you get the answer right, I'll email you a download code so that you can listen to the entire book on Audible, and you don't have to take out an ongoing Audible subscription to redeem the code, nor is there a time limit for redeeming it or for listening to the book. Finally, if you like this video, please click the thumbs up button. And please subscribe to my channel, which over the coming months is going to develop with short videos, which will focus on all things audiobooks for listeners, authors, audiobook narrators, and for people who are interested in becoming an audiobook narrator. Anyway, that's all for this time. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.